Welcome to Machine God Eats, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mr. Darling. I can tell that here in the United States, they're trying to make being poor crime, not just because they want to lock up homeless people, but because of the foundation in which this country was built on. It was built on free labor. And when this country goes through a crisis, you always have to revert back to what worked the best: slavery. We have the 13th Amendment that abolished slavery in the 1860s. However, within the 13th Amendment or whatever, there is the little stipulation that if you are incarcerated or if you are in state property, you are still property. They could still force you into, unpaid labor or slave wages. A lot of prisoners, especially in the South, still pick cotton to this day. To this day, there are still people in the South picking cotton for the prison commission and for the state, in order to make their little stipend, and so they won't be in trouble. And if they refuse to work, they will be punished. So slavery is still a real thing here in the United States. The first time I ever heard that, it was like, you just can't just sit down in prison, that you have to work and work and work and work. You have to work some type of program, even if it's not through the gangs. The state gonna make you work some type of program. That's a form of slavery. So if you are falling behind in a system, right, because of poverty, what can they do? They can lock you up, and they can turn all these useless eaters into something useful by using those hands to put together bibs and bobs, right? And we have all these tariffs going on, right? And at first they look like, okay, they're going to benefit the country, but obviously that money's not going to trickle down to the poor. They're going to pad the pockets of the rich and the politicians, which a lot of us should have known from jump. That's why a lot of us are seeing the pinch in this economy, not just because things are being more expensive, because that money's not coming back and it's not being returned into wages, right? So we as Americans will suffer and we'll become poorer and poorer. And there's a lot of people, and the reason I'm making this video is because there's a lot of people over the last week I've been making, videos about the homeless. I had a video on TikTok that I made about this whole situation about them locking up the homeless, and people were asking me, well, what is my suggestion? If they're not going to lock them up, what should they do? They're not going to put them in a homeless shelter. They're not going. Here's the problem with everything that they're saying: the state, the federal government is purposely underfunding a lot of the programs to get people to transition people from homelessness into being in a place or to being in an apartment. That's why there's a lot of homeless shelters being closed. That's why there's not a lot of beds. Here in Las Vegas alone, there's almost 9,000 something homeless people, and there's not that many homeless shelter beds available. So when people fall behind, they're out there on the street, whatever, they fall, God forbid they fall asleep, because humans get sleepy, right? And a police officer comes and picks them up, right, because they're being vagrant, and they put them through the system one or two times, and it starts to stack and they fall behind. Guess what? They become state property. They become something, even if they're not physically behind bars, they're working in a program to provide for the state, and the state gets off on that. Why do you think the state, I think for every prisoner that's incarcerated, the state pays a good 60 plus $1,000 to house and facilitate every prisoner in this country? That money goes to these private prison companies. This is a prison industrial complex, right? That money goes to all those people. Now you would think, wouldn't that money serve the people out on the street? Maybe the same money that they're spending on those prisoners while they're in there, especially when they're in there for nonviolent offenses like drugs or vagrancy, they would spend that money to transition those people off the street, maybe pay their rent or something like that. No, that's not what this system is about. And me personally, two things can exist at the same time. I'm not necessarily saying they should pay everybody's rent into the end of days, because I don't think that the people should rely on the government. Y'all know how I feel about that, because the reason I don't feel that people should rely on the government, because the government can always pull their hand back and you'll starve to death because you become reliant on the government. If you learn how to fish as opposed to being fed fish, then you will never go hungry, because you can always go catch your own fish. But if the government is constantly feeding you the fish, how the fuck do you ever hope to survive when they pull their hand back? And right now we're living in a time where they're pulling their hand back, right? They're pulling their hand back. They're physically pulling their hand back. They're cutting off all these systems. They're cutting off all these, entitlement programs, Section 8. They're cutting back on food stamps. There's food stamps scams running rampant where people are going to use their food stamp cards and there's no money on there, and the government's not replacing those stamps. So what do people do? They go hungry for the rest of the month, and then if they don't have any backup or no ability to make up that money, what do they do? That's what I'm saying. That's why I feel that you shouldn't necessarily be relying on the government, but the government wants you relying on them, because in situations like this where they start taking over metropolitan areas of people who become reliant on that system, what do the people do? You see in Washington, D.C., you see in the hood, people saying, oh, they got the federal government here, they got the agencies there. But all people are doing is complaining. They're scared that it's going to start, these people are going to start becoming a posse, going to start rounding up niggas because they are racially profiling out there. They are. They are. I've seen it. Even on the White House's official website, they've shown all these people that they've arrested, right? Take them on. These people have not been officially charged, right? But these federal agents that picked them up, they got their profiles on the government Twitter account. I mean, on the White House Twitter account. These people have not been convicted of a crime, but yet the White House, this White House, the National White House, have people on there for low-level crimes like having drugs and stuff on them. What the fuck are we doing? Right? And all these people are fucking usually black men, right? It's profiling. That's what it is. It looks like what China has going on over there with their social credit score when you have people's public shit displayed up there for everybody to see when they haven't even been charged with something for jaywalking and stuff. That's what we're going. They want us to get used to this system of persecution and of the state and of that boot stepping on our neck as hard as possible. And people don't understand that, especially people that have never been in a situation to where they've had to be poor, where they've had to be out there on the street, where they've had to literally submit to the government or its government stipulations in order to get something put on your food stamp cards or a voucher for a hotel or whatever, right? And a lot of us have become jaded because we have to go through this situation and we see that there is no help for us. There was no help for me last year. There was no help besides the help that I got here from this community. That was it. And the paychecks and stuff that I was able to save to get myself out of the situation. But as far as going to this mission, the people, so a lot of the same people that are still going to that mission are the same, stand at that mission are the same people I see on the bus every day. They have not transitioned those people out, right? There has to be another way. The system is not working. And when we talk about drugs, instead of freaking persecuting people for being on the drugs, how about y'all obliterate the drugs? But y'all can't because y'all are in the pockets of big pharma, and this is a system that plays into itself. And once again, you get people addicted to drugs. Why? So they fall into this prison industrial complex to pad the pockets of, once again, oligarchs. They don't want to improve the system. They only want a police state in which you bend the fucking knee completely to where if you're poor, if you don't have resources, we're already in that situation. You can't hire, they can pick you up right now. But if I can hire a lawyer, guess what? I'll be out later. If I can post bail, I'm out right later because I paid somebody some money. But if you don't have the money, you sit in there for the weekend. You sit in there all goddamn weekend until you see a judge, and hopefully the mercy of the judge will allow you to get bail or get out that day or whatever the case may be. Because when you're poor, you're going to always be persecuted by the state. And yet you have all these fucking bootlickers getting on my fucking platform telling me, well, what's your suggestion? If you don't think that he should just lock people up, what is your suggestion? My suggestion is to fix the fucking system. My suggestion is from the people's standpoint, they should fix the system. But intellectually, I know that they have no intention on fixing the system because the system, like I always say, is working as intended. It is working as a meat grinder to grind people into the dust. And if you cannot adjust to this system, you will die. That is it. That is how they want it to be. That is it. I'm not getting on here to try to say, oh, woe is me or woe is this. I'm just pointing out what I'm saying and how certain things can exist at the same time. Even though I don't like seeing the federal takeover of any metropolitan area in the city, at the same time, I can understand it when I see a video come out of Chicago of a man sitting in his car and two niggas walk up and ask him for his chain and shoot him like within seconds of him stepping out of his car. Then I'll be like, okay, well, maybe in some of these cities where people can't even sit in their car and just talk on the phone or talk to they lie, maybe there should be some federal presence or some police presence. You know what I'm saying? Like I say, two things can exist at the same time. When I'm seeing these YNs saying, oh, we running these streets. What was it? The video out of Philly from just a couple months ago when they just shut up a whole goddamn block party. I mean, it looked like a fucking war zone. In that case, yeah, you can probably use some federal agents with some flak jackets and all that other stuff there, putting some handcuffs on people who shouldn't have firearms in the fucking first place. Not because they don't have a constitutional right to have it, but because they're probably violent felons who have fucking victimized somebody else in the past. And yet, they set us up to be in this exact time to be persecuted by the state because the influence of the youth, the people that are out there being picked up for pushing dime bags or for having a switch on them. Why are you having a switch when you can literally, if you have no felonies on, you can go buy a legal firearm and get you a CCW and carry all you want legally? But no, you have a switch. You got the illegal, you got the burner, a gun with no serial number and a burner on it because that's what the rap music tell you. Otherwise, you would never even know that that's a thing. You would never even know that that's a possibility. A lot of these little girls that want to get up to be strippers, if these rap bitches wasn't telling y'all that that's the way to get the bag and to take advantage and to shake your ass and get, they would never even think in their head to go out there and live that type of life or to be fucking prostitutes or whores or whatever the case may be. Same thing with these gangsters, these YNs. They wouldn't do that if the influence wasn't there. And the government and the powers that be paid for those influences to be in these communities so they can put us right where they are now. And they can say, these urban areas are out of control. They all are thugs and criminals and stuff. Because one, economics, they set up to be that way. Anytime there is any economic growth, there's gentrification or there's absolute annihilation in the case of, things like Black Wall Street, Lake Lanier, all that stuff. Y'all drown us out, y'all burn us out, y'all do whatever the fuck y'all can, right? That's one case. Or and the other case, like I say, is the degradation of the culture that you guys have introduced to the people who wasn't divided as much as we are now, and then say, oh look, these people have no culture, their culture is demonic. Let's put the police state in there. Then the first people who they would enslave, the first impoverished people who they would enslave and lock up, the people that I heard that are down there picking out cotton are a lot of black men, black people, black women. A lot of, like I just said in another video earlier this week, all these black women lost their job earlier this year, in different industries, HR, tech, all these different things. I think it was like over 300, 400,000 black women lost their jobs just this year alone. They're setting us up for failure. And think about the schism between us as people, as a community. There's a schism, right? We always talk about the male versus female thing that is deliberately there so that there's a schism, so that now that we're divided, we're at the mercy of the wolves, right? We don't have this structure. We don't have this family. We don't have a community. We say black community, but there is no such thing as a black community because we still judge each other for not having when the powers that be have put us in a position to not have so that they can lock us away and use us as free labor. That's all I'm saying. They don't have to pay you a wage if you're persecuted for being poor, if you haven't got enough, if they can shame you for not having enough. They already didn't put us in that lifestyle and that way of thinking. I don't want nobody to think that just because you don't have something, just because you don't have enough money or you don't have a house or you don't own it. I see all these young people, I'm not where I want to be. Oh no, that's a trick. That's a lie. That's why in my generation, all these people got all these degrees and are struggling just as hard as I am working at a fucking restaurant, even though they have all these degrees, because it was all a lie. It was all shaming tactics in order to get you to fucking play their game. This is a game. This whole thing is a fucking game. It's a sick joke. And the only way to correct it, honestly, is to adjust. It's not going to go away. The machine's not going to break down. You can't just black out the system. You can't just wish this away. You have to adjust. And the biggest way that you can adjust is to adjust within yourself, figure out a way to remain good, steadfast, and decent. Be as good to people around you as you can. Don't be taken advantage of. And that's how you change the world. Because if you can inspire somebody else to do the same, guess what? They'll inspire somebody, and the world begins to change and the world begins to heal, and we take down this machine one person at a time. But as far as a collective, they will quell any uprising because they have infiltrated every uprising that has ever existed, every political movement, every activist movement. They have infiltrated because they are the machine. They have set up the conditions for why those activists even exist. And I'll leave you on this one, and I'll tell you exactly why. I'm gonna use a contradiction here. You will see a lot of feminists and a lot of liberal people who say, rightfully so, that this machine doesn't serve the people, right? They'll say this, especially women. This is not fair. This machine isn't right. It persecutes people for the wrong reason. But then they'll make a whole nother video talking about broke boys, talking about how somebody don't have, talking about how somebody needs to get their weight up, right? Because they're still in the mentality. The system has set up the mentality for people to be. So even when you believe that the system is wrong, you still fall into tenets of the system to which you that drive you on your day-to-day life. And in your thing, the contradictions of being a person is a motherfucker, especially being an American and seeing the things that you see. Because like I say, I understand why people need welfare, but at the same time, I understand how it's also harmful. I can understand, because I love rap music, why it's entertaining, but I can also understand why it's harmful. I can understand a whole lot of things. A lot of, like I say, a lot of things can exist at the same time. I can understand a certain level of policing a community that is tearing itself apart, but at the same time, those conditions were set up by that same government so that it could be there. I can understand these things at the same time. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, y'all asked me to tell y'all when I will be going live. I will be going live tomorrow. If you're seeing this video on Friday, that will be Saturday tomorrow. and we would talk about some of the stuff that's going on in the world and all that. Like I said before, I'm trying to go live every Saturday at 6 o'clock. It's just hard sometimes, y'all. I got to be mentally there. I got to be ready to talk. I don't like to just meander. I like to entertain and interact and be there and be willing to take the hits from all little racist trolls that like to come in there and call me all types of monkeys and shit. So with that being said, y'all, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys are not struggling. I hope you guys are living a fabulous life on this fantastic August Friday. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, bye bye.